You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Does it make you want to be in the moment a little bit more? To move through life with less fear or less anxiety or less caught up on things that don't matter? It may not be a light switch moment. There are times in our lives where we have to allow ourselves the chance to arrive, and you're not always going to feel like it. There are so many things that are good for you, that are wonderful for you, that you may not feel like doing, that you will so appreciate and feel so good about if you just flip that switch that makes you think that you shouldn't choose it. Hello there, and thank you so much for tuning in today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia. I am your host, and I am a self-care specialist as well as a certified astrologer, helping others on their self-love journey. Every day I work to help you feel more comfortable owning who you truly are, and to remember that the little changes that you make each day can lead to big shifts in your life. That is a big piece of each and every show, is just a little bit of encouragement around the things that we can be doing to improve where we're at. And in addition to that, I am very passionate about astrology, so I like blending the astrology with the self-care, giving you little pieces of astrological inspiration that can just help you kind of keep in the back of your mind and inspire you throughout your week ahead. My hope for today's podcast is that it is packed with a lot of inspiration and ideas for you, especially as we really step into a new month ahead. Today, if you're listening to this on the day this drops, it is November 1st. So we are officially into the 11th month of the year. We're going to be talking a lot about how to support ourselves over the next 2 months, and how do we pace ourselves on that race to get to New Year's Day, when so many of us feel that pressure right then to feel like new year, new me. Well, how can we do a little bit of prep work so that we're really in the best possible place to move into a new year? So we are going to be diving into all of that. I've got a lot of astrological inspiration for you as well. And we're going to even be talking about signs from the universe. But first, I just wanted to expand a little bit more on this idea of really getting ready to prepare yourself for possibly New Year's, or at least these next 2 months ahead. And so I thought, let's just see how much things are going to change between now and New Year's Day. I just kind of picked that as, the day this comes out, it's November 1st. The day January 1st is obviously a very clear start. So that's the reason why I picked those 2 days. Now, the first thing I thought would be very just a stark difference is that, at least where I live here in Denver, Colorado, the sunset on January 1st will be at 4:46 p.m. That is a lot earlier than it is today. The sun set at 6 p.m. So that's a huge change. Another difference between now and then is that, as of January 1st, we're not going to be moving into darker and darker days. We're actually going to be on that other side where we're going to start to be gaining light. Personally, I always get very excited for that. So just remember, we're really not too far away from that. Another difference is that on January 1st, we'll be officially into a brand new season. So we're going to be officially in winter at that point. Right now we're in fall. By then we're going to be in the heart of winter. And then, of course, the very obvious difference is that right now we're in 2022, and by then we're going to be in a brand new year. We've got 2023 ready for us. So I want you to take a moment just to take a nice deep breath. If you're in a place where you can even close your eyes for that breath, that's wonderful. And just kind of thinking ahead, okay, in 2 months, winter, longer days, but still in the heart of winter. It's going to be, some earlier sunsets, brand new year. Gosh, we'll have already gotten through all of the big major holidays at that point. So many of the things you're already looking forward to will have already kind of wrapped up, perhaps. How does that feel? Does it feel overwhelming? Does it feel a little scary? Does it feel exciting? I think for me, I just feel like, oh my gosh, like time is flying and there's so much that I'm actually am looking forward to in the next 2 months. And when I start to think of it in that perspective of like, okay, with 2 months from now and really thinking about the things I'm looking forward to, it helps me to brace myself a little bit for that natural slump, that daylight savings slump when, the time change happens and it gets dark out earlier and we kind of move into the winter feeling. It's not as beautiful outside. The days maybe aren't as nice. You don't get to eat your meals outside as often. Some of those things that you maybe look forward to that you've really been enjoying all summer into these beautiful fall days we've been having here in Colorado. Maybe it starts to help you realize like, okay, like we've got this. We don't need to dread anything. There is so much we can look forward to. And maybe not, you have to honor where you are and what that brings up for you. Now, I thought it would be interesting as we, think ahead to also pause and compare right now today with 2 months ago. So 2 months ago, the sun was setting at 7:31 p.m. Do you remember those days? I love it anytime the sun sets after 7 p.m. That's my favorite. Back 2 months ago, we were officially in summer still. Like we were still in our summer days, technically. We were also on the side of the equinox where there is more daylight than darkness here in the Northern Hemisphere. So that was a difference 2 months ago. And at that point, 2 months ago, our last major holiday had been the 4th of July. Like that's how close all of that was. So just comparing that to where we are right now, the weekend I'm recording this is also, Halloween weekend. We are in the heart of fall right now. I've had people messaging me about, Christmas cards, and people are starting to think about all of those things. Like, what a big difference from where we were 2 months ago. And again, if you take that moment to maybe take a nice deep breath, I think for me, what doing this little comparison exercise helped me realize is that things change quickly. And when we zoom out, when we have that perspective, does it make you want to be in the moment a little bit more? To move through life with less fear or less anxiety or less caught up on things that don't matter? And to really kind of remember that zoom out perspective, that kind of hawk or like eagle eye view from up above, remembering what matters right now. Like when I think about what matters right now, I think like you matter, like I matter, like we as individuals matter. Are we meeting our health needs physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we, drinking enough water? Are we moving our bodies? Are we nourishing ourselves with new ideas? Are we being around people who love us and support us? That's something I think that really matters. 2, are we enjoying the gifts that are around us? That is one of my thoughts as we really moved through fall is I'm like, this is a gift. I want to enjoy every moment of the beautiful colors, of the warm days. And the other thing I'm working on right now is enjoying the transition into these colder days. I'm enjoying the walk over to the apartment gym when it's getting a lot colder. And I'm enjoying, putting on the clothes, putting on the scarf, bundling up, instead of taking that as a moment where, maybe possibly choosing the path of feeling frustrated that I have to have a coat or trying to minimize that time by jumping in my car and driving instead. I'm like, no, there is something natural about this process, and I want to acclimate my body to these colder moments, and I need to and want to for myself to be plugged into what is happening on this earth that I live in. And what is happening right now is that it's getting colder. And so be outside, let my cheeks get rosy, breathe in the colder air. Those are moments that I'm trying to choose to embrace as kind of a little bit of it, part of an adventure instead of an obstacle to be frustrated by. I've also been practicing those exact same things when I take my dog out at night. One thing that I just love is when it starts to get warm enough that if I wanted to go outside barefoot, I could. Or if I wanted to just slide on my sandals when I finally get my sandals out from, where they are about to be in the winter. I love that moment. And I think, oh, this is so nice. I don't have to bundle up and throw on extra clothes in order to take Brad outside. And so I'm trying to put that into reverse engineer it and be like, it's exciting. It's that time of year where I get to add clothing, and just try to look at it in a different way. So I guess that is my first layer of inspiration to you is no matter where you are with all of this, maybe you're feeling a little bit like me this year and you're trying to be a little bit more optimistic and look forward to things. Maybe this is bringing up a lot of possible anxiety or dread or whatever for you because you're maybe not looking forward to those things. Maybe you don't like the cold months. I think that the opportunity is that there is something here to appreciate, but you have to know where to look. And it may not be a light switch moment, right? Like there are times in our lives where we have to allow ourselves the chance to arrive. And you're not always going to feel like it. That's this theme that has come up a lot this week. I've finally been really getting back into some movement practices with my body. I've been doing some weight training. I've been doing a lot more yoga. I've been doing a lot of just movement. And I'm not trying to call it like working out. I'm just trying to be like, I'm just moving my body more. And I tell you what, I had 3 different days this week where I was dragging, where I was feeling really quiet. I kind of had a little bit of a more depressive week. And I really was like, this would be a good day to just not go to the gym. And then one of the main reasons that I've been working on moving is because I've been really trying to improve my blood sugar stability. And so I've been really trying to get moving for at least 10 to 15 minutes after each meal. And so basically, I ate a big meal and I was like, okay, I want to do this for my blood sugar. I'm going to go get moving. I'm going to go do, 15 minutes on the bike, or then I'll do some weights or whatever. And I swear, every single one of those days that I did not feel like it, I felt so good afterwards. I felt so great. I felt like I did something good for myself. I felt endorphins. I felt more energized. I felt healthier. I felt more awake. I felt so good. And it reminded me of the fact that we don't always feel like it. We may not feel like moving towards winter. We may not be excited for darker days. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to move through that and arrive somewhere where maybe the feeling is different. Another example of that is, this weekend was Halloween, and so Dave and I had gotten these jumbo pumpkins and thought we would carve them. And we'd been saying for all week, okay, Monday, oh, we should carve them tonight. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we kept saying this, oh, we should do it today. We should carve them today. Yesterday, we were going to carve them, and then the day just flew by. I had to work last night. And then today, and finally I was like, I want to carve my pumpkin. This has to happen. And one of the things that Dave and I have really struggled with, especially this year, is that, so he's a person who is ill right now. Feels sick all the time. And so when you don't feel well, you don't always want to do things. And I kind of default to being like, hey, do you want to watch the game? Hey, do you want to carve pumpkins? Like, hey, do you want to blank? And a lot of times the answer is no. And then I kind of just let that be because I don't want to push it. But today I was like, well, I do want to carve my pumpkin. So I didn't put any pressure on him, but I was just like, I started cutting into my pumpkin, scraping out the insides. I was just like doing something for myself. And he kind of dragged a little bit, and then he was like, oh, I could just kind of see the wheels turning in his head. And then he was like, okay, grabbed his and he started doing it. And it just ended up being so fun. And the best part is that afterwards he's like, you know what? He's like, I'm so glad that we did that. That was a blast. And he's like, I really enjoyed that. And I really wasn't in the mood beforehand. And that's the same thing we're talking about. Sometimes you won't feel like it and you will be better off for it. And whether it's carving pumpkins or moving your body or getting ready for the darker days or anything else, this could literally apply to almost anything in your life. You may not feel like taking a shower. You may not feel like getting up to get that glass of water. You may not feel like, going through your closet or putting your clothes away. There are so many things that are good for you, that are wonderful for you, that you may not feel like doing, that you will so appreciate and feel so good about if you just flip that switch that makes you think that you shouldn't choose it. Like, override that moment, say, I don't feel like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Start doing it and notice how things change for you. And no matter where you're at in your life, no matter what time of year it is that you're listening to this, I hope you remember that this is your secret gift, is to just keep going. That may have been a little bit of a longer introduction than I normally do on the podcast, but I think it's a good reminder, right? And if you have your own stories like that, or if this made you think of something you're going to commit to, please know that I would love to hear it, and just that I'm sending you some extra support on whatever that path is. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up astrologically. One of the things I wanted to make sure to talk about this week is Scorpio self-care. We officially moved into Scorpio season last Sunday, but we were approaching the solar eclipse and the new moon, and we talked a lot about that last week, and so it kind of stole all the attention. So today I thought, let's talk a little bit more about Scorpio self-care ideas, because personally, I think tailoring your self-care each month, putting a little bit of a different inspiration to it, all of the zodiac really does meld so well with what's happening seasonally as well. So, obviously we're in Scorpio season and it's Halloween right now. Those two go together really, really well. So let's talk about some self-care ideas for Scorpio. The first go-to thing when I think of Scorpio self-care is I remember that Scorpio is a water sign. In astrology, water signs and earth signs are more of that feminine quality. So we're thinking about nourishing, we're thinking about inner strength, we're thinking about intuition, we're thinking about movement and flexibility, but not just like bending over backwards, but really like maybe more creativity is a good word. So just keeping that in mind, some very tangible things. One, we're going to be thinking about darkness and maybe life's mysteries like death and sex. These things are very common themes that come up with Scorpio. And if you think about a lot of Halloween themes as well, the idea of putting on masks, dressing up as somebody else. There's a lot of scary traditions that come around with Halloween. It's followed by All Souls Days, so there's naturally a moment to acknowledge those who have passed away and the lives that they lived. And so this is a time of year to think about all of those things. And I think especially as we start to acknowledge death and darkness, like outside of Halloween, I think it's important to remember that, yes, we start to acknowledge that in this moment, but Scorpio especially does not only talk about death as the end of a cycle. It's actually acknowledging that death is followed by rebirth. And rebirth is a huge Scorpio theme. This is why transformation is a word that we often associate with Scorpio. And which is why I think this is such a good time of year over the next few weeks to start to lay the foundation for those goals that you want to set at the new year. Because if you can start to tap into where you need to be reborn now and start to plant those seeds, you are going to have a much easier time when it actually comes to like new year, new me, that whole vibe. So something to consider. I also think it's important to acknowledge that as we really start to move into the, shorter days of fall, where we really start to see nature around us fully move into its dormancy. The leaves go away, the branches are, by themselves. Everything starts to look a lot colder and more stark. That is okay. It is part of the cycle so that we can have a rebirth come spring. So that's a very important thing to think about right now. And ways that you can apply that as far as self-care, besides just, remembering what's going on, but really taking the time to acknowledge the things that have changed in your own life. If you have people who have passed on that you just hold so close to your heart, acknowledging them, setting out their pictures at this time of year, lighting candles for them, that is such a beautiful thing to do and a way to honor them during this moment. And if you're somebody who, hasn't had a lot of death in your life or people who have passed on, think of the parts of your life that have come to an ending and the new beginnings that have started, and take a moment to acknowledge all of the phases of life that you have had. This can be a good exercise to do right now. Now, the next thing that I think is important with Scorpio is kind of talking about the cycle of transformation is, where can you transform the routines that you just had, maybe over the last 2 months or maybe over the summer, and change them out for new routines? If you always like to go for that walk in the evening, what are you going to do now that the days are going to get a little bit darker? Maybe you're going to trade out that walk for a morning walk. Maybe you're going to do a long bath during different days of the week. Maybe you're going to start taking up reading a little bit more, and you're going to curl up on the couch and just read a couple nights a week. Maybe you're going to start a new class. Whatever it is, this is a really good time of year to start carving out new routines and to put some effort and into thinking about, what do you want that to look like? I've got 2 more Scorpio-inspired self-care ideas for you. The next one is going to be, and we have to be careful with this one this time of year, but it does apply, and I'll give you the asterisk as well. Practicing honesty. So one thing I love about the sign of Scorpio is that it is unafraid and honest. So it's very, very authentic. If you know a Scorpio, they usually tend to be pretty blunt or just not say anything at all. So you could maybe feel that yourself this time of year and practice authenticity. Now, the asterisk is that we do have Mars, the planet Mars, in Gemini right now, and it is officially retrograde as of today. So the big thing on this is just be careful how you say what you say over the next couple months, because when the planet of war is in the sign of Gemini, which is a word sign, we can get into some trouble with our words. So just keep that in mind as you practice honesty. Be very sure of where you stand. And honestly, maybe another better idea is practice honesty with a lot of kindness. And then my final a Scorpio inspired self-care idea is it's a good time for powerful moves. Scorpio is a powerful, powerful sign. And, we talked a lot about transformation and things like that. Step into your power, try new things, commit to self-care practices that are for you. What could be more powerful than that? It is a great time to own your power, to have the deep conversations, to stop chasing things and instead start owning what you need and what you want and what you desire. So I think all of those things are just perfect for the next few weeks ahead. I mean, honestly, all the time, right? But especially over the next few weeks ahead. And just remember again, this is a water sign. So if you are a water person at all, or if you want to incorporate more water into your life, those baths, walking along the creek, things like that, this is a really beautiful time of year to just help you remember to move with the flow, the power of water, all of that. And then final little reminder right now is we are in between eclipses right now. So we had a solar eclipse last week. It was the new moon on the 25th, and we are getting ready for a lunar eclipse coming up next week, Tuesday on November 8th. So if your energy is a little bit more zapped right now, you don't have to feel the pressure. I know I'm giving you a lot of encouragement right now, hoping to light a little bit of a fire. But that doesn't mean that you have to strike your match right now. Okay, you have time. That's part of why I'm prefacing all of this for you. Start writing down some of the ideas. If you are feeling low energy right now, that is totally okay. There is a lot going on right now, and eclipses are not the best time for manifesting things. It's a time when things are coming in and out of our lives and happening without a lot of our control. So don't feel the pressure to have to start to do a bunch of things now. More just tap into where your heart is and listen deeply to yourself. And of course, next week on Tuesday, it'll be the lunar eclipse. So I will be talking a lot more about that. But if you want the deep dive into all of this, into a lot more self-care ideas and some ritual practices, I have the Scorpio lunar / self-care guide for the entire month. It goes over the lunar eclipse. It has information about the past solar eclipse, so you can read some of that and see how it applied to you too. It is available through our Patreon for $3 a month. Every month you get a new guide, so it's constantly refreshing, and there's so much good knowledge. It's kind of like a little mini magazine that's made just for you to help support you throughout the month, and we'll give you some extra information on what's happening astrologically, specifically with the moon, and what to do with that information. So if you want that, you can go back and get all the past guides, as well as, of course, this one that's really important. So you can go to patreon.com/abitfromwithin and get your hands on that in the meantime. And of course, if you are a Patreon member, I hope that you've taken a moment to open that up and read through it. If you haven't, I do recommend checking out what's coming up for that lunar eclipse. I will talk about it next week, but it's kind of nice to know what you're looking forward to. But I think I will leave that up to you. Let's take a quick break before we come back at it. So I have a story for you. It's one of those moments where it's like everything works out exactly as it's supposed to, and also kind of like the signs that we get from the universe, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about this second half of the podcast. Maybe like a week and a half ago, I was laying in bed. We keep our window open because our upstairs is just so hot, and even with the ceiling fan in our room, it's like always burning up in our room. So I try to start cooling it down at night. So I'm laying in bed, windows wide open, just, looking at my phone, scrolling, thinking, hanging out. And I can hear in the night outside of my window this bird screeching like over and over. It's like a screeching. This had been happening for like at least an hour. And I was like, what kind of bird is this? And so I started down this rabbit hole of Googling, like, what kind of bird screeches in Colorado at night? And I went through this long list and I was listening to all of these different animal sounds. And finally, after about an hour down the bird rabbit hole, I figured out that it was, in fact, our friend who was around last year but made a different noise, the great horned owl. Now, this owl, maybe not the exact one, possibly, I'm not sure. An owl was around all last winter. And we would hear it at night. And I recognized it last year though, because it was hooting like an owl hoots. I didn't know they screeched. I'm not that up on owls. And so last year we had taken out, the binoculars at night and kind of searched for him in the trees and found him. And it was so beautiful. And it felt like every time he'd come and he'd hoot, he was, it feels so personal. It was like he was having this conversation with us. And this year with the screeching, I wish I would have grabbed the binoculars then, but I didn't. I was just like, I just knew he was there and it was more than enough for me. And, life went on. Well, the other night, it was maybe around 5:30 at night. Like the sun was starting to set. And I had had a long work day and decided I was going to go play the piano. And I realized that I have to share with you, if you did not know that I play the piano. I don't play that well, and I'll just give you my piano spiel. I really don't play for other people, which is part of the reason that we actually have my piano upstairs in our bedroom, because I've just noticed that when you have a piano, it's one of those things that everybody likes to play, and it's constantly this conversation piece. And so I usually don't share with people that I play piano, but it is part of this story. So if you are listening to this, you can know that you are in this very small community of people that know that my secret thing, I'm not even gonna say that I play it well. My secret is that I play piano. So I was upstairs playing piano, and right as I started playing, I heard the screeching, and it literally felt like it was happening as this conversation with the music. And so after a few screeches, and because I was focusing on the piano was kind of happening over like on the side of my brain, it moved to the front of my brain. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the owl. I wonder if I can see him. So I hop up, and it was still daylight, like kind of dusk. And I pop out in front of the window and I look forward, and he's like right there. He was up in this tree that is kind of like, we have like our little back door area, and then there's a retaining wall, and then there's a path, and then this giant tree, and he was in that tree. And he was looking right at me, and I looked at him, and my eyes got big, and I was like, Dave, oh my gosh, Dave, you have to come here. So Dave he of course came and saw it, and he went and grabbed our camera, and we went outside and we were taking pictures of the owl, and we took pictures of him until he gathered up his wings and he flew between the townhomes and on his way to, probably go hunt for the night. And it was the coolest experience. And afterwards, when we were, and I will upload one of the pictures of this owl to the Patreon page for this. So if you are a Patreon member, you can see the picture of the owl. Maybe I'll upload a picture to Instagram too. So check out at A Bit From Within if you want to see a picture of the owl. The pictures turned out really cool. So we were upstairs looking at all of the pictures, and I just told Dave, I'm like, this is one of those crazy moments where it feels so synchronistic, because if I wouldn't have had that night researching the screeches, I wouldn't have known that it was the owl. And I probably wouldn't have looked out the window because I wouldn't have connected that like he was right there. I mean, maybe I would have been like, oh, what's that bird? Now I can finally see him. But also, owls are hard to spot because they really blend in with the branches and the trees. And so, like, if I wouldn't have known what I was looking for, I'm not sure that it would have all added up exactly the way it had it. But it was like, it was this moment that was in the making for a week or so. And there was this just knowing inside of me that I was meant to see that owl, that this owl is this symbol right now. And of course, owls represent wisdom and fortune and an inner knowing. And so many other things that are associated with owls. But for me, it was just like, I guess inner knowing is a good way to put it. I just felt like, I don't know what this is leading to, but this is just a reassuring sign to me that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I've been needing a lot of that lately, which I don't know who doesn't need that reassurance from the universe, but I have really been needing that reassurance, and the universe is giving it to me again and again. And the reason I bring this up is because with everything that I kind of previewed and encouraged in the first half of this episode around actually taking the time to prepare yourself and to sit with yourself as we get ready for these darker days, and even with that, 2-month out New Year's kind of goal in mind, how do we know that we are on the right track or not? And how do we make space for that to happen? Last week on the podcast, I was talking a lot about the labels that we put on ourselves and how from time to time, it's important for us to really sit with those things and consider, are they serving us or not? And you can use the word label, or you can even think about like the roles that you play in your life. You might play the role of a spouse or parent or child. You might play the role of coworker, of boss, of manager, of customer, of servicer. There's so many roles that we play. With labels, I was talking a lot about the other labels, like our religious labels, our political labels, our health labels, and how sometimes those things can really put us in a box and keep us from growing. Now, I kind of expanded on that topic on my blog last week by really narrowing it down to 3 kind of like red flags that you need to keep in mind that you are on the track where it's time to re-examine those things. So if that part of the conversation sounds like something that you're curious about, I encourage you to listen to last week's episode or to check out the 3 red flags towards labeling yourself blog post from last week as well. But the reason I bring this up right now is because if you are doing the deep work and possibly wanting to look at some of these things, or if you're just feeling called, like you're at a place in your life where some of the stuff that's sticking to you or that you feel like is defining you or your life right now, that it kind of needs to go, then I want you to have the support of this second half in mind too, that there are signs from the universe when it is time for us to be readjusting. And I think for all of us, sometimes we are just like, wouldn't it be so nice when it is just spelled out so clearly? And sometimes it feels really clear like that. And other times it feels like, for me at least, there are times in my life where it feels like the universe is trying to, talk to me in these secret codes that I don't understand. And I just want to be as transparent about that as possible, because I think that a lot of, self-care teachers or spiritual teachers, they have this air of confidence about them in their spiritual gifts and in their intuition. And I do feel like I have a really strong intuition, but I do I've always felt like, for me personally, that sometimes receiving the messages from myself, from my guides, is a little fuzzy. Like, I've always felt like there's stuff that they don't want me to know, probably because I am such a control freak about knowing things, that that's not the point for me. The point for me is to learn how to be in the moment. That's something I do feel very confident in. But I do so strongly believe that there are signs around us all the time, and some of the time we have to know what we're looking for. So the owl is a great example of synchronicity. So whether it is an animal coming into your life, a fox crossing the street, or even just a repeating animal, like maybe you don't see them in real life, but maybe you continue to see a video on a certain thing, or people bring up that animal to you. Like it just doesn't feel like a coincidence because it keeps happening repeatedly. That's a sign from the universe of something you're supposed to be paying attention to. Synchronicity can also look like numbers, like, if you see repeating numbers. This has been something that my parents and I have been talking about a lot this year, because both of them have been seeing repeating numbers a ton. And so I'm always like, oh, that's a sign. It's a sign from your angels. It's a sign from God. It's a sign from the universe. Pay attention. And of course, it doesn't have to be an animal or a number, like an actual object, to draw your attention to synchronicity. Sometimes it's just things happening in this perfect order that you're like, if you didn't land here right at this moment, this wouldn't have happened. Maybe it's somebody mentioning a book to you, and then you walk into the bookstore and like it's right there. That can be a synchronistic moment. And you have to kind of use your own judgment on this. Like, sometimes somebody will tell you something one time and you're like, ooh, like there's just like this little spidey sense that goes off, like, I need to pay attention to that. This is really important for me. Like, I kind of will zoom in on that moment if it feels like that. Other times I default to like the 3 rule, like where it's like, if something comes in a threes, like I've had 3 different people in 3 different contexts tell me the same thing. I'm like, ooh, this is something the universe is very clearly trying to tell me to pay attention to. So you could borrow that as well. I think that works really well. Now, the next thing, as far as, receiving signs from the universe, I think that things breaking is a sign. In fact, just this last week, I've had 2 bowls, that actually the exact same bowls, spontaneously like shatter in my hands at breakfast time on 2 different days. And I mean, I've been a little tired lately, but I haven't been that out of it. I wasn't doing anything dangerous. I was holding, and actually for one of these breaks, I was holding the bowl. It had eggs in it, which I don't even usually put eggs in a bowl. That's really random for me. And I was looking at the egg thinking like, I don't really want to eat the rest of this, but I also don't want to waste an egg. And I swear it was like somebody pushed the bowl out of my hand and it shattered on our countertop. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not supposed to eat the egg right now. But I had heard a while ago, like I think it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I had heard if something breaks around you, that you should really try to stay in your awareness and remember, like, what was the thought that you had right before that breaks, because that is trying to tell you something. And so what's interesting is that both the times when the bowls broke for me, I had the exact same theme thought happening. And I thought, okay, in case I was not clear the first time that was, not just an accident, the second time, nailed that in. All right, something to pay attention to. And I feel like in the same vein as things breaking also comes like losing things or finding things. This can happen when I feel like the universe is trying to tell you something. So one of the things that I like to do, if I have the wherewithal and the patience to be calm when I've lost something is like literally just go sit and meditate. You don't even have to meditate on the item or hope that the universe gives you the, location of where it's at, but actually just go empty your brain and kind of tune in with yourself and create that blank slate, because there is something that the universe is trying to download to you. And usually what will happen is that you'll walk back out and find it. I feel like I recently shared this story that this actually happened during the last Mercury retrograde. I had lost some important paperwork this summer. I'm usually extremely good and organized with paperwork, and I had just received this huge packet that was important and had literally no clue where it could have gone. And one of the things is like we live in a pretty small townhome and there's not a lot of places for things to go, which is how I like it, because I'm if I lose something, I'm like, there's just really not a lot of places it can go. So when it was gone, I was beside myself. I could not imagine like, where could this have gone? I looked everywhere for it. And I ultimately just had to call up the place and have them email me a copy of all the paperwork, which is probably better anyway to have a digital copy. So it wasn't the end of the world. But literally 4 months later, during Mercury retrograde, I was sitting right here in my little podcast area where I always am every single week. It's not like I never come in here. I would sit exactly where I'm sitting right now. And there was the paperwork, like literally like right tucked behind like this little a chest that I have my podcast set up on. It was sitting right there, like in plain sight. And I just like looked at it and my head kind of turned a little bit, like the way like a dog's head turns when it's listening to something. And I'm like, huh, okay. And I wish now I could remember what I was thinking about right in that moment, because I think you can take the losing and the finding just like the thing breaking. Like, what were you thinking about right in that exact moment? Because it's kind of like these little light bulb moments coming on. So that's another way the universe might be trying to speak to you. Another way is in our dreams, which are so important. And sometimes they're not going to make a tangible sense, but sometimes just sitting with the feeling of what did it feel like in your dream can be all you need to know. Sometimes there might be a very specific symbol, like a visual symbol or an auditory symbol in the dream as well, that you should pay attention to. You're just going to have to trust your gut on that one. And then I feel like this is very dreamlike, but deja vu is another, like, I feel like sign from the universe to start paying attention. When you're having one of those moments where like, I have done this before, I have been in this exact moment, we've had this conversation, like when you're having that moment, it is so good just to like close down your eyes for a second if you're not, operating a machine and breathe and just, what is this? What feels familiar? What is happening in this moment? It won't always make tangible sense, right? It's not like, oh, we are, eating pie in this moment and, ooh, pie is such a symbol of, abundance. I'm going to have so much abundance this year. Like, it's not so literal. And, if you ever really want to build on that conversation with your spirit guides or with the divine, I think sometimes just reflecting on any of these, things I've talked about, like the synchronicity, the things breaking, the dreams, the deja vu, just taking a moment before you go to bed, even just to write it down and just say, what do I think this means? Or what are some of the things that came up for me today while all of this was happening? It doesn't have to make sense in the moment. Just being aware enough to process through it is more than enough. And so, all of that being said, I feel like I've gone on a lot today. I think the main takeaway that I hope that you're able to move away from today's episode with is that you are in a beautiful time right now, and you have plenty of space in front of you to intentionally move towards the end of the year, through the holidays, towards the new year, that you can make the most of these final 2 months of 2022. And the best part about doing this now is it doesn't have to feel the way that you feel during that week before New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, where you feel like, I feel like a lot of us make decisions from a place of insecurity. Like, you don't have to do that. You get to tap into that Scorpio power, that authenticity, where you get to say, this is who I am right now. This is what I'm feeling. This is what is changing about me. This is what I desire. This is what I'm moving towards, and start to just slowly mold your vision. Start to slowly incorporate rituals that support you. Start to have this ongoing conversation with the universe to collaborate with you and to hold you up right now and to give you the signs that you need so that you can figure out the direction you're supposed to take. And again, this is a good thing that we are moving into some of these darker days, because there's more space for you to go inward, to spend with yourself, because guess what? You deserve it, even if it feels a little scary. It does feel scary, and you may not feel like doing it, just like we talked about earlier, but will it be worth it? Could you create something amazing with this? Absolutely. I think that is a great place to end. Let's close with a card drawing. I feel like we've got to use our Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck. Let's take a couple deep breaths, shuffle these cards, and see how the universe wants to contribute to today's conversation. This is one I've never gotten before. It's the Tarantula card. And the Tarantula card symbolizes being at a crossroad and claiming life's purpose. It says, the tarantula represents a moment when a great decision must be made. It involves prioritizing your life's deeper purpose, or dharma. A habit or routine from the past is sidetracking you from your dream, yet a voice inside keeps begging you to refocus your attention. In order to find true happiness, you must choose dharma. Until you do, satisfaction will be fleeting. The tarantula hovers, patient and calm, like an old friend that knows your inner soul. It already knows that you will choose wisely. It does say, if you feel this strongly, that to bring this into balance, that daily journaling is what you need to do. And I will say, if you are listening to this on Tuesday, November 1st, it's a great day to do something for an entire month, because why not? Although I'm usually not a big advocate of only doing that. I'm always a big advocate of starting something whenever you can, whenever you need to. So hopefully, even though we just pulled that tarantula card, hopefully you will not actually have a run-in with an actual tarantula, because I don't know about you, but that would freak me out. Maybe not if I was at the butterfly pavilion, but thank you again for joining me today. I hope that this was exactly what you needed. If you have a moment to connect with me, either on social media or email or through the website or whatnot, I am doing astrological readings right now. I've been doing a lot of readings around birthdays, also for parents, for their children. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please know this is a great time of year to do that as we are more introspective. If you are just needing a little extra self-care support during these darker days, please check out our Patreon community. It is such a beautiful community for self-care and rooting yourself in mindfulness practices. Thanks again for joining me this week, and until next time.